The myth of Britain's untouchable diplomatic strength just cracked wide open. For generations, the so-called special relationship between London and Washington was treated like a permanent shield, stronger than politics and bigger than personalities. That fantasy just met reality. Keir Starmer has run straight into the hard edge of a shifting power landscape, where old alliances don't guarantee automatic loyalty. In this arena, Donald Trump operates on memory and leverage, not tradition or sentiment. As global cameras locked onto the 47th president's inauguration, one detail stood out more than any speech or ceremony: the unmistakable quiet from the White House in the direction of 10 Downing Street, a silence louder than any public statement. Westminster felt the tremor the moment the guest list dropped. Starmer's name wasn't missing by accident, it was missing on purpose. This wasn't scheduling, it was a deliberate downgrade of his international clout, carried out in full public view. Trump didn't just sidestep protocol, he tore up the old playbook and drafted a new one built on power, loyalty, and visibility. Instead of the expected nod to Britain's Prime Minister, he spotlighted leaders like Italy's Giorgia Meloni and Argentina's Javier Milei, signaling a circle built around hardline influence rather than legacy ties. The real sting came at home. Nigel Farage, Starmer's most disruptive political challenger, received the kind of welcome usually reserved for heads of government. The contrast couldn't have been clearer: one figure elevated, the other effectively sidelined. The message cut through the ceremony noise with surgical precision: status isn't inherited, access isn't guaranteed, and sentiment means nothing without leverage. So what triggered such a full-force diplomatic freeze? Starmer and his team spent years treating Trump like a political joke, tossing out harsh labels and assuming the old alliance would cover the fallout once power shifted. That gamble has clearly backfired. From Trump's perspective, Starmer doesn't represent strength or strategic value, but the fading mindset of an earlier political era. What's unfolding in Washington isn't a warning sign of declining British influence, it's evidence the shift has already happened. While major players reposition, Starmer appears stuck on the sidelines, facing the reality that access, leverage, and relevance must be earned, not assumed. This wasn't just about a missing invitation, it symbolized a loss of standing at the highest level of global power. The inauguration moment wasn't the climax. It was the first clear signal that the diplomatic landscape has changed, and those who misread it risk being left behind as the next phase of political realignment accelerates. If Starmer believed the diplomatic snub was the height of the storm, he may be underestimating the economic pressure building across the Atlantic. Trump's return signals not just political change, but a shift toward tougher, more transactional trade policies that prioritize leverage over tradition. For London, the long-relied-upon partnership now looks less like a safety net and more like a negotiating table where every concession carries a price. The emerging doctrine is blunt: alignment brings opportunity, resistance brings cost. On the campaign trail, Trump floated the idea of broad baseline tariffs, and insiders have hinted that countries seen as uncooperative could face stricter trade terms in future negotiations. Whether rhetoric becomes policy or strategy becomes reality, the signal is unmistakable: economic relationships are being recalibrated, and nations that misread the direction of power could find themselves navigating a far more demanding global marketplace than before. Starmer's Labour Party openly aligned itself with Trump's opponents during the U.S. race, a move that now looks costly in a climate where political memory shapes policy. From Trump's vantage point, this isn't routine diplomacy, it's a ledger of loyalty and opposition, and Britain risks being placed on the wrong side of it. The stakes are serious. The U.S. remains the UK's largest single trading partner, and the possibility of tougher trade terms or stalled negotiations adds real pressure to an already slow-growth economy. That imbalance creates leverage, and leverage drives outcomes in this new transactional era. The White House approach appears less about tradition and more about advantage, where urgency on one side strengthens the hand of the other. At the same time, influence battles aren't confined to official channels. Powerful figures in the tech sphere, including Elon Musk, have become major voices in global political discourse, amplifying narratives that can shape public perception far beyond borders. What may look like online sparring is part of a broader information battlefield, where ideology, influence, and visibility intersect, and where reputations can be tested just as fiercely as policies. From that camp's perspective, Starmer is cast as a heavy-handed regulator on speech and online debate while being portrayed as slow on deeper social and migration challenges, a framing that plays powerfully in today's attention economy. Each time Musk uses his platform to criticize UK policy to a vast global audience, it doesn't just spark headlines, it feeds a narrative that chips away at the Prime Minister standing beyond Britain's borders. The dispute also has a policy layer, with arguments over regulation, content rules, and advertiser pressure becoming symbols of a wider fight about who sets the limits of digital power. To allies of Trump and Musk, such pressure campaigns look like institutional hostility. To their critics, they're accountability tools, two completely different lenses on the same actions. Either way, Musk's commentary increasingly intersects with UK politics, sometimes echoing opposition themes and elevating alternative voices, which amplifies internal divides on an international stage. What's unfolding between Washington, Silicon Valley influence, and London reflects more than personal friction, it mirrors a broader ideological split shaping global politics, where economic nationalism and sovereignty-first thinking clash with rule-based cooperation and regulatory governance, turning one bilateral strain into a snapshot of a much larger realignment. In this narrative, Trump's circle casts Starmer as soft on Beijing, reading any outreach to China as a strategic drift away from Washington at a moment when alignment is treated as a test of reliability. That framing turns foreign policy into a stark loyalty equation, where hesitation can be interpreted as opposition and trade tools become instruments of pressure. The old method, measured statements, careful calls, quiet diplomacy, looks increasingly outmatched in a political climate driven by spectacle, leverage, and public positioning. As influence channels shift, London risks feeling less like a central connector and more like a bystander squeezed between competing power blocks, with every high-profile endorsement of UK opposition figures abroad adding to the perception challenge at home. The real concern isn't optics alone, but the economic ripple effect if tensions harden. Tougher negotiations, investor uncertainty, and strain on key sectors could translate into higher costs and slower growth for ordinary households. Whether this trajectory becomes reality depends on choices still to be made, but the direction of global politics is unmistakable. Relationships now run on visible alignment and strategic weight, and countries that misjudge that shift can find their room to maneuver shrinking fast. Trump may control the trade pen and Musk may command a vast digital megaphone, but the deeper story is about leverage, perception, and shifting power channels. For Starmer, the long-assumed comfort of a guaranteed partnership looks increasingly uncertain, replaced by a harder environment where influence must be constantly proven. Inside Westminster, that pressure feeds political anxiety, as external criticism and internal doubts collide, raising tough questions about leadership, strategy, and national direction. High-profile engagement with opposition figures abroad only sharpens the contrast, creating the impression, fair or not, that access and attention are being redirected. The signal embedded in all this isn't subtle. Global politics now rewards visible strength, alignment, and agility, while hesitation can look like weakness. In such an atmosphere, any leader perceived as slowing momentum or limiting opportunity faces mounting scrutiny at home. The stakes go beyond personality, they touch economic confidence, diplomatic reach, and public trust. When geopolitical competition intensifies, leadership is judged less on tradition and more on results, and the margin for miscalculation narrows fast. Pragmatic Labour MPs are waking up to a stark reality. Sticking with Starmer could mean a crippled economy under looming tariffs and a diminished role on the global stage. Tensions are escalating between the practical Blairite faction and the ideological left, as key figures like Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner face a historic choice: stay loyal and risk national stagnation, or push for a leadership reset to repair relations with Washington. In this high-stakes landscape, Trump controls the levers of economic power, Musk shapes the narrative for the world, and Starmer is left clutching the remains of a once-assumed alliance. The humiliation has reached a fever pitch, transforming a diplomatic snub into a stark lesson on the cost of miscalculation. Britain teeters on the edge of international irrelevance, and the only path to salvaging influence may demand a radical shakeup at home. Time is running out, and in the ruthless game of geopolitics, survival is earned, not granted. Will Starmer weather this storm, or is a new chapter in London's leadership imminent? The answer could reshape the balance of power for years to come.